Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Gee, I didn't know this was a Democratic club, or I would have. When you have Sam Meekum, you're singing Roosevelt's campaign song. Well, fellow Democrats. You know, it's funny. I debated Mayor Smithgall here. I don't know which one of the times we ran, but I guess it was 8 years ago, or more. And I told a joke that ended up on the front page of the newspaper, and me being called a racist because it involved the Irish. I told the newspaper I'm Irish, and my mother thought the Irish were a race. I never knew they actually were. But it was a campaign foolishness, but I went into the Red Rose the next day. There were a bunch of lawyers in there, and they said, until this election's over, you're going to have to be politically correct. No more edgy jokes. And I said, well, there's only one joke I'm going to tell. And they said, what's that? And I said, a Jew in the midnight go into a bar, and they, no, stop. So it's a pleasure to be here. There wasn't any more to that joke, needless to say. That was a joke. 12 years is a long time. How much time do I have, really? Good. Would it be good?
Probably leave about 5-10 minutes for. They're gonna walk out at 1:30.
5 or 10 minutes.
No, give them 5 or 10 minutes for questions.
Oh, okay. 5 or 10 minutes for questions.
Yeah,
I think it's at 1:30. It's over, not 1 o'clock.
1:30. That's right.
Well, with the city of Lancaster, we went over, and I have a senior staff meeting every Monday afternoon where the chiefs and the directors that report directly to me meet and talk about problems that they have, and there's a lot of interplay in trying to coordinate things between, say, public works and economic development or that type of thing. At the last meeting, we asked everybody to write down the 3 things that were the most important in the last 12 years that they accomplished. I don't have time for all of that, and a lot of them didn't limit it to 3 things, but a lot of what I'm going to say today came from what the directors and chiefs said. The first thing they indicated was that we've set a positive tone in the city of Lancaster. I tell people that there was a time when, as a trial lawyer, other lawyers would ask me, when are you moving out of the city? When are you going to leave? Or complain about not being able to sell their house in the city or wanting to move to the suburbs. We've lived in the same house for 45 years. It's the only house we ever owned in Lancaster. We've raised 3 kids there. All 3 went to public schools. I've walked to work for the last 45 years. My wife walks to her studio. We meet for lunch every day. And I'd say to them, why would I want to move out of this city? But that same block, which is now Gallery Row, at one time, you had to have a 6-figure income or be on welfare to live on that block. The city has changed dramatically. Now, instead of when are you going to move out of the city, I have the realtors saying to me, there's not enough product to sell. We sell it too quick. We need more houses. I don't know how many houses are for sale in the city, but I've heard stories, multiple stories about a price being set, and within a day or two, people getting into sort of a bidding thing to buy the house in certain areas. So there's an optimism in Lancaster about its future and the ability to achieve success. Downtown, for example, the amount that we've spent on streetscape in downtown, you wouldn't believe. And people notice it when you first do it, and then they just take it that's the way it's supposed to be. How many people remember the bridge across Queen Street that would break the sight line from North Queen, would break the sight line if you looked up, the lighting downtown, the redoing of sidewalks and bricks, to make the environment such that people want to be there and feel comfortable in being there. I tell, when we were doing the lights, somebody said, well, why do you want to put sidewalk lights in? I said, well, why street lights? Cars have headlights, people don't. We wanted to make it amenable for people to come downtown and for the private sector to take advantage of that. So we created an environment where the private sector is encouraged. And also, I like to say we leveled the playing field, we mowed the grass, and we tried to get out of the way. From time to time, people will talk about sustainability, and I tell people if somebody can make a profit doing it, it's sustainable. Now, I had a millennial correct me, and he's right. He said, well, as long as they don't harm the environment and take advantage of workers. And I said, okay, make a profit, don't harm the environment, and don't take advantage of workers. When I first got in office, we got a grant from the state and hired management partners to come in and do an operational audit of the city, look at everything in the city. They come up with 182 recommendations, most of which have been implemented, some of which management partners isn't from Pennsylvania. We would have implemented, except the General Assembly had gotten in our way, and really we couldn't legally do what they suggested. We adopted a culture of customer service and collaboration. I tried to emphasize to people, when you come to government, you're paying a parking ticket. You go into the Treasury. The person in the Treasury office is on a private phone call, a personal phone call, and you're standing there ready to pay $20 and you're mad about having to be there anyway, and that person is ignoring you. In the private sector, if I did that in my law office, somebody would say, to heck with you, I'll just get plenty of lawyers. I'll just go down the street and get a different lawyer. You don't have the option with government. So something like that is viewed by a customer, and you have to view the people that are coming into your public office as a customer, is viewed as arrogant. So we tried to emphasize to people, treat the people you deal with as customers, like they could go someplace else, that they don't have to be there. We establish meaningful partnerships to produce meaningful results. Ronald Reagan once said, you can get a lot done if you don't care who gets credit for it. No truer words were ever spoken. Who cares who gets credit, because most people won't remember what it was like before anyway, and credit's a fleeting thing. Get things done, get them done. If people want to give you credit for it, I tell the job of mayor is to take credit when things go right, to take blame when things go wrong, and not have a whole heck of a lot to do with it either way. It just happens. But oh yeah, did a great job, thank you. For example, the Lancaster City Alliance, it was formed out of the James Street Improvement District, the Downtown Investment District, and the Lancaster Alliance at the time. I had suggested that about 5 years before it happened, and I was at a meeting, and I'm not sure, I don't think anybody here was at that meeting, where I was told that was the dumbest thing, and why would you ever want to do that? And it was business leaders primarily, and finally I had to stop them and say, you know, I got the message, you don't have to say anything more. But we continued to pursue that. That has made a huge difference, putting those three entities together and having them coordinate their activities in the city. Building on strength, the economic development plan done by the Alliance, we asked them to do it. We told them we would work with them. We helped them fund it, but they got a lot of private funding too. And we now have a strategic plan for the next 15 or 20 years that involves not just downtown, but the neighborhoods, the corridors into downtown, done by the Lancaster City Alliance. The Lancaster Chamber has been a real partner in assisting us in so many different things. One of which comes to mind is the Mayor's Commission to Combat Poverty. Why would the Chamber of Commerce be involved in that? Well, they were heavily involved in it. They were involved in preparing the report, and they continue to be involved. We did a report, Prosper Our Parish, which talked about the situation of third-class cities in Pennsylvania, and has been used all over the state. I'd like to say it's dated, but it isn't. It's about 9 or 10 years old, and the problems are still the same. They still haven't been addressed. Pension plans, the inability to do taxing other than property taxes, the inequality of property taxes based on the assumption that people that own property must have money. Come door to door with me sometime and hear people say we've lived in this house for 50 years and we don't know if we can keep it because of the property taxes we always thought would have a roof over our head. We can't get the General Assembly to act on it because it's just too hot, and they just sooner have automatic pay raises than deal with issues like that. It's nice you don't have to vote on your own salary the way it's worked. Gee, I wonder who came up with that. Another partnership, the Lancaster Housing Opportunity Program, LHOP, is working in the southwest of the city right now, which is now called SOE, Southwest, to develop a neighborhood program which has so far been very successful. They have a very active group of people. Sometimes you see neighborhood organizations that are 2 people that say they speak for the neighborhood. Other times you see, honest to gosh, real neighborhood organization. This is one of them, and LHOP was very important in forming it and continuing the operation. The city is now financially stable, and we relied on, these aren't my words, this is our business administrator, planning, discipline, and strong management. We've seen a growth in spending over the last 12 years, limited to a little less than 2.5% a year, which, considering the contracts that we have, considering the fact that the contracts are decided by arbitrators in binding arbitration from which there's no appeal, which again is asinine. All fire and all police contracts are either negotiated with that over your head or are done by an arbiter. To limit it to 2.5% a year is saying something. And in fact, we went to self-insurance, I guess maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Our self-insurance plan, we now have in escrow around $2.5 million. And we've saved millions of dollars being our own self-insurer. Now we're lucky that we got through the first couple of years, but it's just a way of managing your finances in a way and treating public money like your own money. I came from the private sector. One thing Mr. Smith-Gold said about me during the debate here, in fact, I think it was, that I never ran a business. Well, that's going to come as a shock to a lot of lawyers in town that they don't run a business. That you can, it's certainly professional, but the decisions that were made when you have a partnership that you know are going to show up on the bottom line at the end of the year when the partnership money is divided up, gives you, you watch how money's being spent and you deal with it in a special way. We tried to get that into the government, that people understand that though this isn't their money, it is their money, it's everybody's money, and try to deal with purchasing and whatnot in more of a business sense. The earned income tax revenue continues to rise, and if you look at a chart, it's going like that, which means the average income in the city is going up. It doesn't mean that there are no poor people or there's more people, that it's spread out reasonably, but the earned income tax and the real estate transfer tax, the two have nearly doubled over the last 5 years. Again, both of those we can't adjust at all. We're limited by them. Our general fund budget reserves right now are about $13 million. I talked to the mayor of Bethlehem 6 or 7 years ago. They were trying to get a budget reserve and they had set a goal at $8 million. We have a $13 million budget reserve. It makes it easier for us this coming year, as I announced last night. There's no tax increase, and we're using some of that reserve. It can get to the point where it's not appropriate to build it up anymore. It's time to use some of it. So we're able to do that. I know during the recession, we were lucky we had a reserve because, and I'll just give you one example, our interest income went from $1 million a year down to a couple of thousand. Those of you who have gotten your bank statement and see that you've earned 13 cents interest on your account in the last year will know what I mean. Again, infrastructure matters. We've dealt with our infrastructure. There's investment in streetscape improvement, public parks and facilities, water quality. We have almost the equivalent of bottled water for the water in Lancaster. We have a filtration system. It costs us almost $100 million. But a filtration system that's state of the art, really. Stormwater management, all help to build investor confidence and the fact that people want to live here. Now, some of the visible results of what we've done, a single hauler program, which was the most controversial thing I was involved in. If you ever had 200 or 300 people screaming at you, "I love my trash man." He was very emotional. People were very emotional about it. We've adopted a single hauler plan. When I ran the first time, I stood on the corner of Nevin and Walnut Street and counted 11 trash trucks that went up Nevin Street, which is one way, one lane, during the day that I was there. 11 trash trucks, which means nobody could get around them, everybody's behind them, plus you have 11 trucks coming through your neighborhood to pick up trash. The single hauler system, we've raised the cost of that one time, $10. For seniors, it's still $160 a year for all your trash and recycling. And the results, again, if you saw the statistics, the result in the amount of trash we pick up and the amount of recycling really indicates that it's been successful. Large commercial sites that stood blighted for decades have been developed. The stockyards, we were having a staff meeting and somebody was complaining about the stockyards, and Pat Brogan, who's the chief of staff, said to me, "Have you been out to the stockyards lately?" And I said, "No." Because if I'm going out to Lidditz Pike, there's the stockyards. She said, "Well, let's go out and take a look." And I went out and it was incredible. It was obviously people living inside. There were all kinds of pits that if somebody went in there at night, it'd be bad. So I asked our chief of police, "What happens if you get a call to the stockyards at night?" He said, "Well, we'd try to surround it. We're not going in because we don't know what we're going into." It was all dilapidated. It was horrible. I asked the fire chief, "What would you do if the stockyards caught on fire?" "Well, would surround it, would pour water on it, would hope the wind didn't blow the wrong way." So we talked to the people and said, this can't remain. Well, we're trying to sell it, we're trying to do this. I sent the code people out, and the code people, I said, "Write up everything." And they did. And then the people that were running the stockyards at the time, I came to them, I said, "Look, you can tear it down or we'll tear it down. If we tear it down, it's going to be prevailing wage. It's going to cost you over $1 million to do it. You could probably do that for half of it. You got a month." Well, it took 45 days, but it was down. And it was funny, somebody said to me, "Have you seen the stockyards lately?" And I said, "No." I said, "Go out and take a look." And so Gail and I went out, was just a field of rubble. And Gail said, boy, it does look really nice, doesn't it? I said, you know, it does. It was a definite improvement. Well, look at it now. Look at it now. 2 facilities being used and another high-tech facility being built there, producing jobs, tax income. Some of the other places, the Excelsior building, if you haven't been in there, if you get a chance to go to an event in the Excelsior building, it's fabulous. The Boulevard building is being developed. I see John's here. The Hotel Lancaster is in the process of being renovated and brought up to a first class, Holiday Inn hotel. The convention center and the new Marriott expansion. My predecessor, when I met with him for a half an hour during, and I love this word because you get to use it so rarely, during the interregnum, which is, anybody know what the interregnum is?
Mine hurts.
Larry does, sure, regnum. It's the time between the election and the time of assuming office is called the interregnum. I don't know why, I always liked it, but during the interregnum, I met with him for a half an hour. And one of the things he told me was, forget about the convention center, it's not gonna happen, the hotel's not gonna happen. Well, it was a fight, and there was still a lot of work to do to get it done, but downtown Lancaster certainly would not be what it is right now if it wasn't for the hotel convention center. And someone asked me, well, would that have happened without you? And I said, you know, there's probably 50 people that it wouldn't have happened without you. I mean, the easy ones, Dale High, the Steinmans, Gib Armstrong, so many people were involved in that, but it's sort of symbolic of what we've done in Lancaster. Again, who cares who gets credit for it? Get it done. And in fact, Art Morris was chair of the convention center board when he called me. He said, we're about to get the plaque designed. Who do you want on the plaque? And I said, put the people of the city and county of Lancaster. He said, no, we got to get these names. And I said, nobody's ever going to look at the damn thing anyway. Who cares? Has anybody who's been to the convention center, do you know where that plaque is? So what Art did, being a good politician, he put everybody on it. Even the opponents of it are on the plaque, which is fine. Miguel's, which is on South Duke Street, it was a nightclub and something that kept our police busy at night. It was a mess. SACA, with the help of the city and Community First Fund and some other funders, is now putting a small shopping center down there with a restaurant, really revitalizing the area. The press building, the moving of the rail yard. We had a lot to do with that, though. Thank John Fry and Keith Orris for what they did, because they were the main movers behind it. But think of what that used to be, and look at, a lot of it's an empty field, though LGH is building on it right now. I should say Tom Beeman, too, had a lot to do with it. But look at what it is and try to remember what it was. You get used to a nice open field, but you forget it was a junky rail yard with a bunch of trains sitting in it. The new Fulton expansion is coming up. They assure me that they're going to build an additional building on the lot downtown. Well, between them and the Boulevard building, 101 North Queen Street, you could probably, I would say, in the next 4 years, expect 500 more people downtown, working downtown, which is, again, like manna from heaven. Really, it helps the restaurants, it helps the stores, it helps the housing prices, so we're moving. Looking ahead, we have the CRIS and the land bank. The land bank is a redevelopment authority +2, where they can get in before sheriff sales and buy the property, renovate it, or sell it to somebody that's going to renovate it with conditions, recoup the money that they spent, and they can beat to the sheriff's sale the slumlords under a land bank. Well, a developer, little quid pro quo, but was nice enough to contribute $1 million to that. I don't know if you call arm twisting contributing, but we have $500,000, and for the next 2 years there'll be $250,000 each year, which is going to give us the opportunity to get in, get properties that are dilapidated, get properties that are going up for tax sale, keep them out of the hands of the wrong people, take them and give them to our redevelopment authority and redevelop them. The CRIZ is in 2 cities in Pennsylvania, Lancaster and Bethlehem. And Bethlehem gets 30 or 40,000 a year out of it. What it is basically, there's 130 acres we can designate in the Community Revitalization Improvement Zone. I think that's what it is, but it's CRIZ. When we do development in there, any increase in state taxes that occurs in that area between here and what it is after the development is ours to use for economic development. First year we got $2,800. Last year I think we got $2.5 million. This year it's pushing $4 million. $4 million for a city our size to be able to use that for development. And up to this point it's been mainly the big guys that have been getting the money, but we now have funds that smaller businesses might be able to get $50, $100, $200,000, which is the difference between them operating and not operating, on a loan basis, a low interest loan or a no interest loan. So it's been a success. The reason we're one of the cities that got it is because I knew they had something similar to it in Allentown. I brought it up with Senator Smucker. He talked to Senator Brown. We hired a lobbyist and spent the next, I don't know, 3-4 years working on it. We had to get through the Corbett administration, the revenue secretary, the budget secretary. Everybody was pushing back on it. Finally got it to the governor. He signed it, and then of course, as politicians are wont to do, in his message at the end of the year, included as one of his 6 main achievements for the year. One thing it did represent is, and I'd love to come back sometime and speak about not just the CRIZ, but this topic, period. Pragmatism is the only ideology that works in local government. You can be liberal or conservative, but tell me what's a liberal position on whether snow should be plowed, and what's a conservative position. I'll tell you, there's not much there, really. Senator Smucker and I agree on probably, I don't know, 10-15% of things. We worked extremely closely because he knew it would be good for the city. I knew it would be good for the city. And we worked together to get things done. If only they could do that in Harrisburg and Washington now. It's, well, somebody asked me, why don't you run for the General Assembly? I said, never run for anything you wouldn't want to get elected to. Our KOZ zone, which is a tax-exempt zone down in southeast Lancaster, just off of Prince Street, is just about full. We sold almost every lot. Neighborhood park improvements are found everywhere. 6th Ward, Martin Luther King Park, Brandon Park, Crystal, Rodney Park, Farnham Park is scheduled for major renovations beginning next year. In all those parks, we've done green infrastructure in the parks, and we've put public art in the parks. I went over to Brandon Park shortly after it was completed and was just going knocking on doors, asking people what they thought. And the reception in the neighborhoods was incredible. We've taken parks that were nothing but parking lots, put community pools in them, put public art in them, gave the people in the neighborhood something to be proud about. How you feel about your neighborhood is how you feel about yourself. So it's worked. Green infrastructure, we've used green alleys, intersections, Plum and Walnut Street. Anybody that's been there with the Lancaster Brewing Company right in that corner. That takes about 2.5 million gallons of stormwater a year out of the stormwater wastewater system. Green roofs, we have more green roofs than any other city in Pennsylvania, though you don't see them, per capita that is. You don't see them, but they're there. And what they do is slow down the infiltration of water, keep us from dumping raw sewerage. I've already signed the EPA consent decree. We're setting out a plan with the EPA, and I can't talk about it because it's embargoed at this point until they sign it. But basically what it is, a 20-year plan of how we're going to deal with this problem of having a stormwater wastewater system combined. When it rains, our plant can't handle the volume of water, so we dump raw sewerage into the Conestoga. It's got to stop. We recognize it's got to stop. EPA recognizes it's got to stop, so we've worked out like a 20-year plan of steps that have to be taken, and you'll hear about it soon. The new fiber optic network now connects city-owned buildings, traffic signal network, a safety coalition video cameras, Land City Connect. Hopefully by this time next year, though, with public utilities, you always have problems. Not the people doing this, but the people that from other public utilities that we're asking to cooperate with us. They're slowing it down, but would like to have a fiber network throughout the entire city, which will make internet way cheaper, and it'll operate like that. Some people are hooked up already, depending on the part of the city you live in, and if you've put your name in early, the reports I get is that it's working great, and it'll be great for commerce too, especially for big users of the internet. Looking ahead, and I'll try to wind it up here, capital improvement plan and budget will be necessary to construct an operations center. We're trying to put streets, parks, all together. We had the property that fell to us when the Armory moved out down on Chesapeake Street, and Thaddeus Stevens came to us and said it's the only opportunity we'll ever have to expand. And we thought about a bunch of trucks coming and going each day, parks and streets, or a college that teaches kids trades located in a low-income neighborhood in the city. And we bit the bullet. We sold it to them. It cost us to sell it to them, and that this is taking the place of that. But Thaddeus Stevens is well on its way of building a huge addition. We have a new consent decree with the EPA, as I said, that will require implementation. We have a poverty commission, Mayor's Commission to Combat Poverty has set a goal of cutting poverty in half in 15 years. I told them I didn't want a bunch of touch-and-feely stuff. I wanted legitimate, attainable goals. They've done that. They've continued to monitor it. They report to me that they've been successful, at least in the initial thing. So if you look at the city right now, young people want to move in. Young people want to live in the city. I use as an example, when I was a kid, Leave It to Beaver, Father Knows Best. Where were all those shows? Suburbs. When my kids grew up, Sex and the City, Friends, all that stuff, where was that? It's all urban. And younger people want to be in an urban setting. They want to be in a walkable city. Bicycles, we're really promoting the use of bicycles in the city. They do, plus older people do, when you don't need 5 bedrooms and a quarter acre of lawn or whatever to mow, and where you'd like to be someplace where you can walk to the Fulton. I can walk to 30 restaurants from my house. They want to move in. So perhaps I think the best thing that we've done is people are optimistic about the future. You can't say that at the national level, and you can't say it on the state level. The people are saying, boy, I can't wait for next year to see where we're gonna go. We've elected a great person, a really sharp person for mayor, and I know she's gonna keep the momentum and build on it. So the best is still ahead of us, and thanks, I think I got close to time there. Any